So, what if the path to making the UK your permanent home wasn't just about how long you've lived there, but about what you've actually contributed? The UK government has just put forward a pretty radical proposal to change its immigration system, and we're going to break down exactly what this new earned settlement plan could mean for millions of people. This one sentence from the Home Secretary really gets to the heart of it. This isn't just a political soundbite, it's a signal of a huge philosophical shift. The whole idea here is that getting permanent residency is no longer something you can just expect after a few years. It's a status that, under this plan, you would have to actively earn. So you might be asking, why such a massive change and why right now? Well, this isn't just an idea that came out of nowhere. The government is saying this is a direct response to a massive challenge they see on the horizon, a challenge they believe could affect everything from public services to social cohesion. And this is the number that's driving this entire debate, 1.6 million. That's the government's forecast for how many people are expected to become eligible to settle in the UK in just a 4-year window between 2026 and 2030. Just to put that into perspective for you, that's about the entire population of Barcelona. And this chart, wow, this is where you really see the scale of what they're talking about. You can see how the numbers are kind of stable for years and then, boom. That dashed line shoots right up, peaking in 2028 with almost 500,000 people in just 1 year. This is the settlement wave the government says it's trying to manage. So who exactly are all these people? Well, this chart breaks it down for us. You can see that big teal section. That's the health and care visa. It's the single biggest driver. Basically, a huge number of health and care workers and their families who came over between 2022 and 2024 are all on track to hit their 5-year mark at around the same time. So to put it all together, here's the government's argument. They believe the sheer speed and scale of this recent migration has been, in their words, destabilizing. And because of that huge wave we just saw coming, they're saying the current system, where you pretty much automatically get to settle after 5 years, just isn't going to work anymore. It needs a complete overhaul. Which brings us to their big idea, this brand new system called earned settlement. And listen, we're not just talking about a little tweak to the old rules here. This is a total rethink, moving from a fixed timeline to a much more flexible and you could say a much more complicated clock. So what does earned settlement actually mean? Well, think of it less like a finish line you automatically cross after 5 years. It's more like a target you have to actively work towards. Getting permanent residency, or indefinite leave to remain, is no longer a given. It's something you'd only get by proving a real, sustained, and measurable commitment to the UK. And here it is. This is probably the single biggest headline from the entire proposal. The starting point, the new default for most people on a path to settlement, would be doubled from 5 years all the way up to 10 years. But, and this is a really big but, that 10-year timeline isn't fixed. The proposal brings in this idea of a time adjustment model. You can think of it like a personal settlement clock. It can be sped up if you do things the government values, like earning a high salary or working in public service. That can literally shave years off your wait. But it can also go the other way. Doing things like claiming benefits or breaking immigration rules could slow that clock down, adding years to your path. And we're not talking about small adjustments here. These are huge. Just look at these numbers. Earning over £125,000 a year for 3 years could knock a massive 7 years off your 10-year path. But on the flip side, claiming public funds for over a year could add another 10 years. And for really serious stuff like illegal entry, they're talking about adding up to 20 years. Okay, this is super important to get. This whole time adjustment clock is only one piece of the puzzle. You can think of these new mandatory requirements as the hurdles you have to clear just to get into the race. Before that 10-year clock can even start, everyone would have to have a clean criminal record, pass all the tests, have zero government debt, and prove they meet a minimum income level for several years. So you've got this flexible 10-year clock plus all these new, tougher rules on top. It's pretty clear this is going to create some real, well, winners and losers, right? Let's get into who might be most affected by all these proposed changes. And this leads to the big question on a lot of people's minds, I'm sure. Is this just for new people coming to the UK in the future, or could it actually affect people who are already here, people who have been planning their lives based on the rules we have now? And the answer, well, this is one of the most controversial bits of the whole plan. The government is proposing that these new rules would apply to pretty much everyone who is already in the UK on a settlement path, but who hasn't actually been granted it yet. Yep, that means for hundreds of thousands of people, the goalposts could literally be moved halfway through the game. And this slide really paints a picture of just how different the outcomes could be. A very high earner, for example, could potentially settle in as little as 3 years. But then you have health and care workers in roles that aren't degree level, the very people making up that settlement wave we saw earlier. For them, the government is floating the idea of a completely separate and much longer baseline of 15 years. Now, it's not a simple 10-year rule for absolutely everyone. The proposal does carve out some special pathways. For some, like spouses of Brits and people on the Hong Kong BNO route, the 5-year path would be protected. For others, like those on a global talent visa, the path could be even faster, just 3 years. But then you look at refugees, and for them, the proposed new baseline is way longer, at 20 years. So with all these huge changes on the table, what actually happens now? It's really important to remember, for the moment, this is just a proposal. It's not law yet. So let's look at the process from here. Okay, so the government published this paper in November 2025, and that kicked off a 12-week public consultation. That's a really key window where anyone, individuals, organizations, can give their feedback on these ideas. After that period ends, the government says it will review everything it's received before announcing any final policy. So again, nothing is set in stone just yet. And in this consultation, the government is asking some massive and pretty contentious questions. They're asking for opinions on things like whether access to benefits should be pushed back all the way to citizenship. They're asking about that 15-year path for some workers. And maybe most importantly for a lot of people, they are specifically asking if there should be some kind of transitional arrangement for all those people already in the UK on their way to settlement. When you boil it all down, the way the government is pitching this whole thing is as a way to restore public confidence in the system. The Home Secretary's argument is basically that, to protect the very idea of migration, the system has to prove that it still works for this country by making sure people who stay are contributing and integrating. And that really brings us back to the central question, the one at the very heart of this entire debate. This whole proposal is a fundamental shift, moving away from a system that's mostly about how much time you've spent somewhere and towards one based on your measurable contributions. So the question for everyone to think about is, what does it truly mean to earn a permanent home?